Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. It's an exciting week in the markets. Look at how crazy I look. I don't know, I guess that's how it goes. The hair's getting long again, so I'm starting to look as ridiculous as I actually am. We're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, because I'm excited about these two together as they are market movers. We'll take a quick look at Link, and I'll make myself look less stupid here before you can't see me again. Boom, so a full picture on Bitcoin. That's where I like to start. It reminds myself there's a lot of time in a market movement. And if you've been paying attention, which I hope you have and been going through your studies, this rising channel here is what we are watching, and we just had a breakout through the first area of that. So I actually want to start by going into the 4-hour, daily time frame. Always good to have all this data. Really helps us decide where we are. So now that we know where we are in the big picture, yep, that's right, we can see where we are in the little picture. So we had gone over this the other day in the private group on the private call. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but here is where the backup broke out. So what's nice is that we actually got a very, very small reaccumulation pattern that we were watching this whole time. So it was a rising gradient pattern, as we had mentioned multiple times. It went into its backup phase and it broke up. Beautiful. I'm really excited about this because this likely signals the start of the SOS phase for Bitcoin, which goes probably to the top of this regression channel, somewhere around 14,000, maybe even breaks out of it around 16,000 before coming back down and retesting its final stages in the backup. So this is really, 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 really exciting. Yes, I said that. I hope you're excited, because once we get an SOS in Bitcoin, which we have not had yet, it's going to signal to the rest of the market that the bull market has started. Whereas in Ethereum, the bull market we already know started. It's just not everyone knows it yet. Only the big money players really recognize, I think, that the bull market started in March. So that means Ethereum is in a great spot as well. I'm quite excited about this because I do believe we're probably going to get about 100% run to the next regression line on Ethereum. So I'm keeping a close eye on this because I believe we're in a smaller, less exciting phase. So effectively, this type of reaccumulation with this hard line up, down, and then a lower box of accumulation before breakout, we can see. I'm going to have to go through my Wyckoff study. I haven't fixed these ones up yet, but it's this one here, so we won't waste anyone's time. Let's make sure that we can see that on the screen. Yes, this one here. I see you've got your BC, your AR, your ST, and then a drop down to the support range. This is what I believe we're seeing here is a reaccumulation pattern. So there's lots of room left in these moves, which is the exciting part. And these are some of the industry leaders, which means there's not a whole lot of risk for downsides in comparison with some of the other SOSs that we were watching. So I did get pushed out of my Binance trade, which is the reason of having like a discernible stop to some degree. Now I had made a few grand off that trade in the previous move up, and then I just got fully pushed out of it once I recognized, oh crap, hey look guys, top of the box, both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Sorry, I said that in reverse. Both Ethereum and Bitcoin. We've been looking at this, going over it. So now that we're seeing an SOS, we're likely seeing some of the first parts of the smaller LPS phases. So if we get rid of this, the data of my drawing, and we look at some of the smaller things that are happening here, we can actually learn a bit more about the Wyckoff methodology as we're going. So here we can see that there was an increased amount of supply with very little effect on the market price. So this was a big indicator that we weren't going to go too much lower. This look at how much supply came in, and then volume spread came in. Effectively, we're actually circling all three of these versus here, this supply coming in versus this price spread. So this is actually a really bullish moment, followed by our backup phase here. Beautiful accumulation range, and then a breakout at the top of the box. And then at the bigger time frame of the picture, it does look like we're going again to around probably 14,200. So we can see more of this story as we zoom out. On the volume profile here, we do have a little bulge around 14,000 to 15, 16,000. So I do suspect we get an SOS that comes to the top of the channel, breaks out for one final peak out, and then comes back down for its backup phase. Now this will be very telling for what kind of what style it is. So I'm going to be all Hawkeyes in on this backup phase, because it's going to become extremely important in the future of our whole ecosystem. So this was a really exciting moment, because it means we're one step closer to getting that SOS and then going through the backup phase. But in the meantime, I hope everyone knew how to take advantage of these things as they show up. My cycle is to wait for the backup phase to complete, which is what I've been doing with Ethereum here. It looks like the backup phase is about to complete. So Ethereum is technically a few steps ahead of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin went up and then had a reaccumulation inside of the box, which is what we just saw. So here is our reaccumulation inside of the box before the SOS, exactly the same as what Ethereum did. Ethereum, on the other hand, is in its backup phase. So it's one step closer to like a bull market, effectively, which means that it could really quickly run 138% to the top of the regression line, whereas Bitcoin seems like it's much more likely to do the SOS phase and then come back down. Well, how low? I'm not sure. Probably 12 grand looks pretty like a pretty clear spot on the VPVR, as well as on the like a multi-day time frame here. You can see that this is like our top of this trading range here is actually quite predominant all the way to the VPVR as well. So the SOS would likely go out and then come back down to that. It could come all the way back down lower. Again, 6 grand is always still on the table here, but I do believe it will become a strong bull market coming out of this SOS. So here, I'm really looking to initiate a lot of my trades in Bitcoin. I'm already holding Bitcoin in my portfolio, so I didn't feel like risking it too much on this SOS. I would rather wait for the SOS to show me its ride, because I wasn't in a leverage position to take advantage of Bitcoin here, even though like I look and it was pretty clearly a great spot to go to be playing, just because of the accumulation. Now, I was in a leverage position with Ethereum, so I was able to take advantage of some of that momentum. Not as much as I would like to. I was focused a little bit too much on Binance. I think I let that get the better of me there. But clearly we can see Bitcoin starting its move into its SOS, which is nice. We know there's more room for upside still. And then Ethereum in its backup phase, providing us with this as well. So I was in Binance. I got stopped out around this regression line, first regression line here, which is a lot lower than, so eventually I'll explain this trade to you guys. I built most of it here, around 1,600 Binance token. I sold all of it up in the way here, made around 5 or 6 grand. Okay, I was out of the position fully. I re-entered almost fully within this trading range. So I was really focused on, I thought Binance was going to do this, and I was really excited about it because it was such a short backup phase. But it seemed like, see, in this moment when I was in this trade, I was hyper excited because it looked like we were getting another reaccumulation pattern. Don't get excited about trades. I held on to it a little longer than I would have normally probably been playing, because I was trading a really big lot size, and I want to be very present. And I don't mind the extra, like $1,000 extra, or like $1,000 of loss of P&L, because remember, I was up 5 or 6 grand from this part of the trade and this trade. So losing $1,200 is just really only part of, I've lost part of the paper gains, if that makes sense. So it was not a loss. It was a loss of what I could have taken had I just stayed out of the position. So I do measure that into my outcome. But more effectively now, it looks like, because Bitcoin is going to represent this big trade movement, we're going to see Ethereum do something very similar alongside. Now, there is probably going to become a point where we see that start to flood and cycle back into other of the players we've seen in the altcoin sector. So this is going to be a wonderful chance to witness, because it's going to likely push some of them down to the final lows after their SOSs for other potential plays in the future, because Bitcoin's going to shoot up 14 to 16 grand, come back down to 12 grand, confirming a bull market. As soon as it turns around in that bull market cycle again, the goal will be to be out of most positions, and just basically riding Bitcoin and Ethereum, because they're going to be really easy trades to make, if that makes sense. There's a high probability of them producing, say, a 50 to 100% return, which is a lot. if you know how to play in the space, even if it doesn't go higher than that, that's an enormous amount of value to take part in. So again, I try not to measure too far into the future, but it's very clear that we could be going to hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bitcoin over the next 2 years, effectively, right? So let's just make an assertion here. If Bitcoin goes from where it's at basically right now to $64,000, that is a 300% increase from where it's at now, right? So if it goes to 100, or let's say 400,000, that's 60,000. So if it goes to 120,000, that's an 800% increase from where we are now, right? So if we keep at it, we keep doubling down on that, we'd find a 1,200% increase and maybe a 1,600% increase, which is, you can measure out here on the fib side. So I'll get a little crazy. Let's make sure the video is still recording. Back to the bottom of the channel for fun. So bear with me, guys. This is just a rough sketch just so we can hypothesize and pontificate, 100% pontificate, which means I'm just making shit up as I go. So I'm pontificating right now. We can see that even the 4236 line is around $70,000. And we've seen the crypto space hit that and multiples of it. So we'll just roughly do the same thing by measuring a distance of space, and we'll just double it. And maybe we'll go triple it just for shits and giggles, so we can make a price range projection based off what we just had. So we have this as a price range projection. And again, this is just total like nonsense. There's no validity to what I'm talking about here. That would put us to 130. And then 220, and maybe even if you say it again. And this is a box of, and they're variables, but it would be pretty damn close of another Fibonacci extension riding these waves out. So I could show what I'm hypothesizing here by doing this as well. Let's imagine that's the new top. So 270,000, and then you do it again. Let's imagine that this is the top. So there's potentials of time and space moving here, where you're seeing, okay, well, what would bring us to $1 million or something like this per Bitcoin? Because I do believe that potential is there, especially over a long period of time. You're going to see some really big swings here still. So I guess the point of this exercise is to go look. I think we're probably going to get to somewhere between 120 to 320,000, 260,000 on this bull cycle because of its compression in time based off the Fibonacci's, and especially what we had as a past movement. To get into a bigger relationship of that in the $1 million, where we're going a multiple of that Fibonacci movement to, probably won't see in this wave. So if we get to $280,000 of Bitcoin in a nominal value, it's a 1,600% gain over the next 2 years potentially. That's an astronomical figure. So in these early days, really what we're trying to do is just best educate ourselves for, okay, where are we in the markets? How am I going to take advantage of this when the market turns around? Will I be brave enough to know that the market is turning around, so that if I just need X number of multiples over a normal yearly salary, I know how to re-hypothecate my positions and find myself somewhere stable? So as I go through and I kind of explain some of this stuff. Again, guys, remember that we're in the very early stages of a bull market. So buying up any of these LPS phases is going to become, this is where the idea of buying the dip gains so much value out of a long-term perspective. But again, remembering where we are in the full story will allow you to not fail and not buy it on the downside, when really you should have been out of your position back in 2017 at around $20 to $13 to $12,000 and been looking for what will end up becoming a very obvious selling climax, because it always happens. It's just a matter of time. And then remember that we got 5 or 10 or 20 years ahead of us. Anyways, this is to the Arcane Bear. I hope that was valuable. I don't even really know what I'm talking about specifically. I'm learning as we're all going. We're all learning as we're all growing. It's important to remember that. It's important to, I think, remind myself that, remind you guys that I actually know that I don't know everything, that this is a space where we have to include for randomness in our hypothesis. and to have a good time enjoying the ride along with you guys. So I've sketched out a few new ways to produce content, so we will be doing that when it's less difficult. Like, I've got power outages and stuff here, and yesterday the power went out. We want to make a video, so I didn't make a video because there's no power. So I've found some ways to kind of sideline the production of things, so when those things happen, I can still be working on what we produce next, which is more DeFi dives? Yeah, the DeFi dive? Something like this. Dives into DeFi. Something DeFi dive. DeFi deep dive. Anyways, these more educational aspects for me about what is a liquidity provider, what are bonds on the blockchain, what does insurance on the blockchain look like, and really trying to understand the next waves of these financial primitives, because I think they're so important as to how Bitcoin grows, that we should be very aware of them because they are an extremely important part of the money markets as a whole. So for instance, actually, I should have went over this too, but if we go over... Actually, you know what? I'm just going to save it for another video today. I'm going to make more than one video today. You guys are going to watch. I'm going to talk about PayPal in another video, and I'm going to rant about that. And I'll go over the article. We'll see what it looks like, and we're going to produce another one. So stay tuned for that, because we're just going to produce more content. So that way, the 14 minutes around me just hypothesizing and pontificating about the markets, other aspects of DeFi and the DeFi deep dives, and what's going on in the general market for my own conceptual aspects, so I can see if I think that there's any real utility in what that looks like into the future, because hey, I love to rant. So thank you guys all for joining us too, the Arcane Bear. I'm going to give you the outro logo, and thank you. Thumbs up, thumbs down, it doesn't matter. I just appreciate the support.